And Khidr alayhi salam from his own pocket paid for the wall to be reconstructed. And Musa alayhi salam is appalled. These people have offered no hospitality to travelers. You should at least demand a refund on the money you spent. Did I not say to you, don't ask any questions? Now this is the end. هَذَا فِرَاقُ بَيْنِي وَبَيْنِكَ. This is the end. You're going to have to leave. But before you leave, let me explain to you that which you could not understand. Let me give you the ta'wil. Ta'wil means the interpretation. Tafsir, explanation. Ta'wil, interpretation. The three events which were chosen were events which could not be understood unless interpreted. Is this by accident that Allah has chosen three events which could not be understood unless interpreted? And the interpretation is only possible with knowledge that comes from above. I hope you're listening. I hope you're listening. Because the next 20 years are going to be very interesting in this encounter between Zionism and the world of Islam. And Islamic scholarship has to be trained. Islamic scholarship has to prepare itself for this battle. The reason why I scuttled that boat is because there's a king coming to seize the boats. Seize your property. And by scuttling the boat, I saved it. And when the king has gone, they can repair the boat. And so what appeared to you to be something bad wasn't bad at all. It was very wise and sensible and intelligent. And so if you base your judgment on only external observation and rational analysis, when you need to interpret, you can be wrong, as he was wrong here. A lesson for Banu Israel. Number two, the boy, obviously, who was killed, this could not have been an actual event. Why? Because it is haram to kill an innocent child. And if you kill an innocent child, you're going to have to pay for it with your life. You've got to be killed. But this is the wisest of all men. So obviously you need only 5 ringgits worth of intelligence, not more than that, to understand that this is not an actual event, but something to be interpreted. This child was lost. Someone has taken him over. He's growing crooked. In Akhiru Zaman, someone is going to be after your children. And once he takes over your children, they're going to grow up crooked. That little son of yours is going to become a homosexual. What are you going to do when your son becomes a homosexual? And you are a father and you are a mother who worship Allah. You can't change him. What do you do? So he cut off. He killed the boy. And prayed to Allah that Allah may send him a better child. Sending a message to you in Akhirul Zaman to scuttle your boat. Scuttle your boat. Don't go more driving around that with a Mercedes-Benz motor car. A little Kalisa would do well. And you live a safer life. The big $5 million house in Damansara Heights or Srihar Tamas or wherever you are. And you have to employ guards to save, to protect you, security. Every room has a security. But if you live in a kampung house, a nice little kampung house in a kampung, and you live a life that is like the villager, you scuttle your boat. You are living a safer life with more security. And when you see your children growing up, and that mastermind has taken over, Dajjal, and you cannot correct them, you've done everything you can, cut off your ties. Cut off your ties, even though they're your children. Cut off your ties and move on without them. Otherwise they will destroy you. And that wall, beneath that wall, a believer was dying and he had 2 orphan children and he wanted to leave his wealth for them. Couldn't find an honest man, not one. Not one. Something like Lower Manhattan, you know where Wall Street is. Couldn't find an honest man. And so he dug a hole and buried the money. Sure, it couldn't be paper ringgits, they'll rot away. Had to be dinar and dirham, you know, the real money, not that bogus, fraudulent and utterly haram money. So he dug a hole and buried the money. And then he built a wall on top of it and prayed to Allah to preserve that wealth for his children. And since the wall was falling, Allah told me to reconstruct it. So there are more things that you could see. There are more things that you could see that I saw. Musa alayhi salam. Your judgment was based on external observation, and you were wrong all 3 times. And my judgment was based upon internal knowledge, apart from external observation. And I was able to recognize what you could not recognize, like the paper money, for example. But there is another link between Dajjal and Khidr. And I want to do that before I end. Musa alayhi salam is the head of the Ummah, Banu Israel. And they are a people who are waiting for the Messiah to come. And they heard that someone is coming to Medina. So the cream of the Jewish scholarship moved to Medina. At that time it was called Yathrib. In anticipation, waiting for this one person to come. And when Nabi Muhammad ﷺ emerged in Mecca, the Quraysh did not know how to deal with this situation. How can we tell whether or not he is indeed a true prophet? Let us send a delegation to Medina, at that time called Yathrib. And incidentally, I have just written, this book came from the printry only yesterday. Medina returns to center stage in Akhirul Zaman. And we have it here tonight. We also have it in Bahasa, Medina kembali ke persada tumpuan di akhir zaman. We have it outside. Very small, maybe about 30-40 pages. Let us send a delegation to Medina to ask the rabbis, how can we tell whether he is indeed a true prophet? The rabbis responded and said, ask him 3 questions which only a prophet can answer. And in this book we analyze, Surah Al-Kahf in the modern age, we analyze those 3 questions. Number 1, ask him about the ruh, the spirit. Number 2, ask him about the great traveler who traveled to the two ends of the earth. Or number 3, ask him about the young men in the cave. Only a prophet can answer. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends down the answers in the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in sending down the answers, does something to tell them, I understand that first question is different from the other two. The other two relate to Akhiru Zaman, but the first one does not. So he sends down the answer to question 1, but he puts it in Surah Al-Isra. وَيَسَلُونَكَ عَنِ الرُّوحِ, and they question thee about the ruh. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends down the answer to the second question about the great traveler. And he puts it in Surah Al-Kahf, not in Surah Al-Isra. Because Surah Al-Kahf is the surah of Akhiru Zaman. And then he proceeds to tell us the story of Zulkarnain. But notice something. Notice carefully that in answering question 1, he repeated the question and then answered it. وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الرُّوحِ, he repeated the question and then answered it. In answering question 2, he did the same thing. وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنْ ذِي الْقَرْنَيْنِ, and they questioned thee about Zulkarnain, and then he answered it. And in answering question 2, they had only asked him about 2 journeys to take, east and west. But Allah knew that the target of the question was the 3rd journey. And so he answered the question and gave the 3rd journey. And in giving the 3rd journey, he took them to Gog and Magog. That was the target of the question, Gog and Magog, who are major signs of the last day. And so obviously question 3 must also be connected to a major sign of the last day indirectly. But in answering question 3, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not repeat the question. Why? Nothing happens in the Quran by accident. I want to suggest to you that the target of the 3rd question was Dajjal. And it is because Allah wanted to keep them guessing. Keep them guessing. He does not repeat the question. And in answering the question, he does not take them to Dajjal.